Hello, now we will study about factors promoting bilingualism and multilingualism. So, bilingualism is a result of contact between speakers speaking different languages, especially different L1s. It can also happen when you learn a language for socio-economic mobility by coming in contact through a classroom situation. In individuals, bilingualism, multilingualism can be a result of staying in close proximity with speakers of other language, marrying or having familial relations, close friendships with speakers of other language, having high opinion of or looking up at speakers of other language in a way like you feel that they have more prestige. Thus, the language also has more prestige. So, other language being necessary for upward social mobility, higher education, political and social recognition and power, migration and better employment opportunities. So, these are the factors that will promote being a bilingual or a multilingual in an individual. Now, if we look at bilingualism as a group phenomenon, it often results from two main sets of conditions: close proximity and displacement. Many of these overlap with the individual reasons. So, what is close proximity? Close proximity. What is the ordinary conditions of life in their ethnic group put speakers in proximity of other speakers of another language? So, ordinarily, the way you are living, you come in contact with speakers of other language and you have to live in close proximity of the speakers who speak another language. So in such situation, the group that has less power in terms of socio-economic and political power and less prestige makes effort to learn the language of the other group. For example, if you look at the tribal languages in India, for example, take example of Jharkhand. You have the speakers of tribal languages living with speakers who speak Indo-Aryan languages. Hindi also is one of them. So here you will see that the Hindi speakers are less likely to have motivation or to want to learn the tribal languages, while the tribal language speakers are more likely to learn Hindi. Why? Because it serves the purpose of upward socio-economic mobility, gaining recognition, and also prestige and status that comes with the dominant language, that is Hindi, in that place, in that region. Okay. Now, what is displacement? Displacement, either physical or psychological, promotes need or desire to learn another language. Now we'll see in some details what are the conditions for close proximity. So, living in a bilingual or multilingual nation, especially as a minority group member, situations of multiple languages in a nation can give rise to societal bilingualism, like in India. Here, it is very hard for us to find somebody who is a monolingual, doesn't speak any other language. Or in case of Hindi belt, we can say, because there are a lot of languages which are covered under the umbrella term Hindi. So you also have Awadhi, you have Bhojpuri, you have Maghi. These are all different languages, but in the census they are all listed under Hindi. So the speakers who speak those languages apart from standard Hindi will be listed as monolinguals, which they are not. They speak Bhojpuri, Maghi, Awadhi in addition to Hindi. Okay. So that's why it is very difficult in India to find somebody who is actually monolingual, totally monolingual, doesn't know any other variety or language. In such situations, people who speak minor languages or are linguistic minority are more likely to become bilinguals or multilinguals. But we can have exceptions like the Catalans in Spain. We need to consider the socio-economic and political power of the minority before predicting assimilation or becoming bilinguals. Minorities like Catalans who are well placed do not have a need to assimilate. I'll suggest you to read more about this language situation. Another, People who live in border areas between ethnic groups or nations, or even in India, you will see that, as you know, that the states, they are organized on linguistic basis. So those people who live on the border areas, for example, the border of Maharashtra and Karnataka, they are more likely to be bilinguals. They are more likely to know Kannada as well as Marathi. So, living in a multi ethnic urban area, again, that is very important because here it becomes imperative for people to know the commonly used language. In cities like Delhi, Mumbai, New York, etc., so it is important for people, if they are living there, to know the language that is used commonly for common contact purposes, apart from knowing their own mother tongue. So it encourages learning a new language. And for children, they'll acquire a new language. Why? Because they are mingling with others outside their homes. So, and they'll be talking and they'll be interacting. They'll be interacting and socializing others in the language that is commonly used in the multi-ethnic urban area where they are living. And adults will also have to learn that language in order to live comfortably. Engaging in an occupation that involves many contacts with outgroup members. So if people are engaging in trade or business with other community, then also it gives them a motivation, a reason to learn a new language. That language may be a lingua franca or contact language that will bring about ease of doing business, ease in transactions. So now, for example, Swahili is used in Eastern and Southern Africa as lingua franca for business transactions and such contacts. So it becomes important for them to know it in addition to their own mother tongue. Another condition is marrying outside one's ethnic group. For example, if there are many inter-community or inter-tribe marriages, then it is more likely for the groups to become bilinguals. I've already spoken to you earlier that in certain tribes, they have a tradition that they cannot marry inside, within the same tribe. So, within, and that's why they cannot marry within the same language speaking community. So, the women generally will come from a tribe that is related where they can get married but do not speak the same language. So in that case it is more likely for the children to be bilinguals or multilinguals, and because it is a practice that is prevalent in the entire tribe or community, that's why it leads to bilingualism or multilingualism in the entire tribe or community. Another, having a parent or grandparent from another ethnic group. So, of course, if you have a parent or grandparent who speaks another language, then that is more likely, or it can be one of the motivations that will make you learn a new language or expose you to a new language since you are a child, thus making you acquire it. Now, what are conditions of displacement that can aid bilingualism or multilingualism? Movement of speakers from one place to another, either voluntarily or involuntarily. So, if somebody is migrating from one place to another, either voluntarily or involuntarily, they are moving out of their own accord. They want to go to some other country, migrate to some other country. For example, a lot of people from India also go and settle in the West, in the USA or other European countries and so on. So that is voluntarily, and if they have to go and live there, work there, then they need to know the language. And the group of migrants who are there will have to become bilinguals, will have to learn the language of the new place that they have come to. And even involuntarily, in case of war or occupation, people have to leave their homes and territories and move to another. So if they are moving to another, then they'll have to learn the language of the new territory that they have come to. in order to live comfortably, in order to get their work done, in order to be acceptable, to get better treatment, and so on. Another condition of displacement, the ruling class changes due to war, occupation, or colonialism. For example, when the Britishers colonized India, English became the language of the court, and also the language of higher education, the language that had the power to give maximum socio-economic mobility. So we had to learn English, and we are still continuing. It still holds that power and position. Border changes. If the border of a state changes, for example, so suppose a district that was part of Bihar becomes a part of Bengal, the state official language would become Bangla, and administrative work, medium of education, etc., would now be the new state language. There's a reason for the people to learn the new state official language. So that would promote people becoming bilinguals, right? In order to get their work done, in order to get benefits from the state, in order to be part of the state funded education system, and such other things. Then another situation is circumstances encourage the speaker to learn the territorially dominant language. So I'll again give you example of a tribal language speaker, say somebody who speaks Berhor or somebody who speaks Kurup in Jharkhand, who is forced by the circumstances to learn the territorially dominant language. Here that will be Hindi, in order to have upward socio-economic mobility, high status and identity of being associated with a more powerful group, that is the group of Hindi speakers. In order to migrate to a larger city in northern India, especially, for example, say going to Patna or going to Delhi or going to Lucknow, as migrant laborers, they'll need to know Hindi. Thus, it becomes important for them in order to become employed, in order to gain employment and have a socio-economic mobility, they need to learn Hindi. Another condition of displacement that promotes bilingualism is acculturation. Here, what is acculturation? Where migrants or minorities or other such groups, they try to adopt the culture of the new land that they have come to or they have adopted. Why? Because it makes it easier for them to live there and work there. And language plays an important part here. The speakers shift as they admire the characteristics associated with the speakers of the language that they are adopting. Those characteristics may be that they are politically dominant, they are socio-economically more better off, or such other. They are more confident, they have more stakes in the running of the state and administration and so on. Whatever they feel is attractive towards that group. And that becomes a reason for them to learn their language as well as adopt certain cultural features from that culture. But acculturation can also be at times without any direct contact between cultures, as in the case of currently dominant American culture. Teenagers, even in India, you'll see that they try to speak in American English or what they perceive or think is American English, celebrating Halloween, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, and such others. What is that? That is, they do that. Why? Because they feel that there is something better about American culture that makes them feel better off than those who do not do that. Another condition of displacement that promotes bilingualism is when education in an L2 is prerequisite for socio-economic mobility. For example, if the language of state is different from group's language, or if a group is migrant or refugee in another country and they have to learn the language of the state that they have come to in order to gain employment. And education also is in the language of the territory to which they have come. So in order to get education and also through education gain socio-economic mobility, they will adopt the language of the new territory to which they have come. Now, what are types of bilingualism? So there are two types of bilingualism: subtractive bilingualism and